Welcome to our final session here at the Big Apple Film Festival, and we appreciate you guys being here and all the attendees. So, as it being our final session, we waited and brought in the big guns. We brought in Michael Klein from Magnolia Entertainment. He's a manager and producer, is a literary manager who recently joined Magnolia after operating his own management and production company for over a decade. So I'm going to let you start off, Michael, by just tell people what you do on a daily basis and over at Magnolia, and we'll start from there.
Sure. Where to begin? Well, let's see. I've worked in Los Angeles and Hollywood for the last close to 20 years. I knew from the very beginning that I got out here that I didn't want to be an agent, and I actually didn't know the differences between agents and managers. But a lot of people told me, in order to if you want to produce or get into development, that almost, working at an agency is kind of like almost like considered a prerequisite. So I started off at an agency. I'm glad I did, because it immediately gets you into the industry. You're immediately tapped in, and especially serving as a liaison between clients and agents. And one of the things that I was most surprised about when I was on a lit desk at an agency was that the writers would ask me often, "Hey, did you read my script? What do you think?" And I love that they cared about my opinion, because as an assistant in an agency, most people don't care about your opinion. And then fast forward a few years later, when I had the opportunity to interview at a management company, I liked that it was a much more of a creative atmosphere. I liked that managers do have the ability to produce. It's a lot more development. It's much smaller of a client roster. And I just kind of liked that kind of relationship between manager and client. Agencies have some fantastic relationships with clients, but I just like that it was a lot more of an intimate relationship. It's it's more about career nurturing and really kind of championing one's career from the get-go. So I ended up at this management company back years ago. A company at the time was called Bender Spink. Bender Spink was ran by Chris Bender. The company he runs today is called Good Fear. So essentially, a lot of the people that he was with back then are still with him today. But that's kind of where I got my management feet wet. Then 2010, I got in a position with a friend of mine where we were able to launch our own management production company. And over time, it was great. Had some ups and downs. Sold a lot of specs, produced a handful of films, had clients from like writers, directors, graphic novelists, what have you. And then about a year and a half ago, I started with Magnolia because I'd say probably right actually during COVID is when I kind of felt like, okay, I want to be armed with more resources. And me and my partner at the time were just kind of evolving into doing different things. He was more in the unscripted space. I was really kind of reaching out into the working with a lot of international filmmakers, people that are really interested in genre. And I felt, okay, this is a good time to join up with a company that really has aligned aspirations, and that's kind of what happened with Magnolia. I run the lit department there. It's a small company, but it has some really fantastic clients, and that's sort of it in a nutshell.
Great. Well, we appreciate you being here and taking your time to be here. We're going to be talking we're going to talk about pitching to streamers and to producers and directors, executives and such. So when you start to prepare a pitch, what is the number one thing you need to think about before you walk into the room? Because, I think people get real nervous because pitching is totally different than the skill set they have on a regular basis, on a regular day situation.
Sure. I mean, I think going into a pitch, you have to know who you're going to be talking to, know everybody who's in the room, and really kind of just be prepared, know about the company, know about what they're about. But more than anything, your job is to really come off as authentic as possible. They've heard thousands and thousands of pitches. So, and there's a simple structure to pitching that some people can follow, but unless you're completely authentic, nowadays, they could see right through it if it feels sort of, like it's kind of like we've heard this before, or, even if you're sort of somewhat robotic. There's a lot of artists out there that, might be considered, more introverted and aren't really great in a room. And if that's the case, then it's always good to come in with maybe some visuals, maybe something on your iPad, or if you have a producing partner and they're sort of better at talking, or if you have a manager and agent and they're better at talking, sometimes they can do that. But it's really just a show. Be extremely prepared. Preparation is key. They want to know if they're going to be pouring in money into and investing in you. They want to know that you have you know the material better than anybody. So preparation and authenticity, I think, are the keys to a great pitch.
Well, perfect. We'll move on to some submitted questions. And right off the bat, our most popular person, Anonymous, has, how can I pitch my 3 TV projects for licensing? And what would you do if you were me? They live in Connecticut. They're, they're seniors, so they're plus aged, as I like to say. Very creative, a producer, not a writer. So how would you have them pitch 3 TV projects for licensing?
Well, I mean, one thing I would do is not go all in on all your projects. I mean, it's better to kind of try to cultivate a relationship with somebody, and knowing that if the door stays open, then you can go in with the next pitch. If you throw a bunch at once, and you get passed on right away, then you're left with not, that door is closed until maybe you could come up with something else. But if you have 3 projects you're really excited about, you really should figure out, all right, which one out of those 3 serves as the best reflection of your voice, and which one of those 3 feels like makes the most sense for whoever you're going to. So I'd focus on one, and going into it, try to figure out how to appeal to whoever you're reaching out to. If you feel like there's some sort of connection that you have, whether maybe you guys went to the same college, or somebody that worked at this company, just trying to find some kind of common ground so it doesn't feel like it's completely out of left field. If you could figure out a way to connect with them somehow, that's the best way. Otherwise, if they don't know you and it's not through any kind of referral, they're likely not going to open up the email.
Yeah. So don't spread yourself too thin on, and even if all 3 are connected, those 3 scripts are connected, you still want to take one and focus.
Because let's say they like one idea. Like, let's say you send one out of those 3 and they like it. But they're like, well, this is great, but for whatever reasons they're passing. And then they might say, but you're quite pleasant. We think you have a nice voice. The door's open. And then, okay, I know now how to approach him or her with the next project I have. And then that's exciting because, you kind of learn how to sort of, deal with this one producer or executive, and whatever things that you didn't do the first time around, now you can do or not do the second time around. Perfect. And hopefully the third time around.
Linus is asking, suggestions for developing an indie web series and pitching it as a long form series for networks. I'm not sure if that indie series exists already, but they're talking about taking an indie web series and pitching it as a long form series for networks. Suggestions on the best way to approach that?
Well, I guess, I mean, that's sort of a loaded question, but I think you'd want to figure out, okay, well, for any series or film, whether it be at long form, traditional format, whatever it may be, I always think it's best to not go to the buyers first. I think like it, you might say, okay, I got a project here. It's completely perfect for Apple. It's completely perfect for, HBO Max, Paramount Plus, what have you. It may be, but if they don't know you very well, or if you don't have a body of credits, then that's just more reasons for them to pass. So what I would do is look through, your whole world of producers, and especially producers that might have deals with these streamers, or deals with studios or networks, and figure out, okay, which producers have done this kind of thing before, which companies have done this kind of thing before, or which companies might have a brand that might be sort of synonymous with what you're trying to do. And I'd go after all those producers first, because let's exaggerate. Let's say you go out to 100 producers, no buyers, to 100 producers. Even if 100 producers pass, you still haven't burned all your territories of buyers. No. You could have learned 100 lessons there and say, okay, well, now I could go to Netflix. Now I could go to Amazon. So the short answer is, get a list of producers together that makes sense and go after those guys first. That's what I would do.
So build your team before you head to the big guys.
Yes.
Absolutely. Michael Johnson wants to know, when you submit a synopsis, do you prefer a synopsis that spoils the ending of a screenplay? So you know the whole story, even if there's a M. Night Shyamalan twist at the end.
Well, that's a tough one because I understand that, especially as the writer, you're like, well, the whole experience is this great twist, and you're gonna ruin the experience if you read this thing and you don't have the right experience here by spoiling it. If it is, it depends. I think if you have a really good hook or really great log line, or even a synopsis without having to spoil the ending, if it's just really great, then leave it like that. You could sort of tease them by saying, and so gets involved in an investigation that and he'll never be the same from that, something of that nature. Just kind of be cryptic about it. But then some executives say they don't care. They say, just spoil it for me, because I want to know what it's all about, so they could just get to the point. It's for them, it's not so much about the experience of reading it as is for them to try to set it up or sell it.
Right.
So if they ask for it, go ahead, spoil it. But if you have a great sort of hook, then just use that to kind of tease them.
So my follow-up would be, I would submit it, obviously, it sounds like submit it without the spoiler in it.
Yeah.
But is it a good sign for them asking for the spoiler because you got them hooked and now they want to know
if they're getting back to you and intrigued, then that is a good sign.
Yeah. So keep all your secrets. That's what I'm hearing.
Keep all your secrets until someone that's in a position of power asks for it. And then,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. We got Brother Rick, which is very apropos, because what is your take on the market of faith-based content?
Well, there certainly is a market. It's sort of like anything else. It's you have faith-based, you have your horror, you have indie art house. It's really all about who you surround yourself with. It's like, if you have something that feels sort of comparable to some of the movies that the faith-based successful films have put out there, then like anything else, it still is a business. So reach out to those producers that work in that arena, and align yourself with those guys or gals.
Because there's a market for everything. If Hallmark can make 31 new Christmas movies every year,
Hallmark kills it. They kill it.
I got 2 in a row about pitch decks. First is from JD Hughes. Do you like pitch decks for screenplays on initial submission?
If it's well, the short answer is yes. I think a pitch deck is always good to have, because it shows it shows a lot of thought was put into it, especially if you're really good at putting one together, and it's visual as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be visual, but if you're a director, it probably should be visual. But the answer is yes. I do like pitch decks. Sure.
Well, then the follow-up,
I think they can be really effective.
Yeah, and so the follow-up from Grant Stewart, it would be, would the management company or agency pay for the creation of a visuals pitch deck, because hiring a good graphic designer for a great presentation can be expensive?
I feel like no. The thing is, I've seen companies like production companies sometimes pay for pitch decks or projects that they're involved with the creators, but no, in the beginning, unfortunately, no, they don't really, and it's just about like that creator finding their resources and trying to figure out how to put together. I mean, a lot of people are doing that now, so it's you versus everybody else. So it's I know it can be very expensive, and it's a sort of ironic business where filmmakers are charged so much money for everything, and they have the least amount of money because we're all struggling. So I understand
the old "it takes money to make money" situation.
Sadly, yeah.
Rick Barham is asking, for pitching a pilot script for a TV series, how important is the series Bible and lookbook, and anything else he's missing? So I don't know if this is the initial submission, but when do you bring in the series Bible and lookbook in a pitch so that people know you've got more than just the log line?
Yeah, well, so similarly to the last question, I think it's good to have that. With the thing is, it's great to have all of that thought put into it, and think so far ahead. And but I think, for people that don't know you, you kind of have to kind of give it like breadcrumbs, little by little. It's and because what happens is, let's say you don't have a series Bible. Let's say you just have a pilot outline, right? You have a pilot outline. Then the next question the executive is going to say is, all right, well, do you have a written pilot? Yeah, I got a written pilot. Okay, they read the pilot. They go, okay, cool, this is great. Well, do you know what happens the rest of the season? Actually, I do. Well, can you give me a synopsis? Sure, send in a synopsis. This is really great. Well, would you happen to have a Bible? Actually, I do. These are, so it's sort of like give them things little by little, because like sort of like what I was saying, you don't want to earlier, you don't want to throw everything at the wall at first, because then if they don't know you, then they'll just feel overwhelmed, and you want to kind of get them to enjoy little by little, and then as they embrace your voice, they'll be really excited about the fact that you're so prepared. So that's how I would do it. And it's hard because I know when you put together all that time and a deck and a pitch deck and a Bible, it's a lot. You want to show the world, well, look what I got here. But better less is more in the beginning. I think you don't want to, and you certainly don't want to overwhelm, because that just incentivizes people to put it aside. This is too much. I don't know this person. Let me put it here.
Yeah. You don't want to throw the Unabomber manifesto at them right off the bat.
Right.
Overwhelm them. I absolutely understand.
Yeah.
Teresa Andre is asking, pitching unscripted versus scripted, is it a different type of pitch, or is it pretty much the same pitch but different ideas?
That's a good question. I don't often, I'll confess, I mean, I don't really work in the unscripted space. I mean, I've been involved in pitches over the years with the unscripted. I mean, it sort of all comes down to preparation. It's really just about preparation. But I'm not the best source to ask about unscripted. So
okay,
yeah.
As a literary manager, that makes perfect sense. Anonymous is asking, and this is a question that I feel is a very broad question in general. It's a question you could ask anybody in any industry. So how do you go about asking a connection to them reach out to your contact? So you do know somebody who might know somebody that you're going to pitch to, because they say it feels weird asking, hey, can you reach out to them for me? It's one of those things where I think you just got to kind of suck it up and do it. Or is there a way that you like to be asked to refer to another thing?
It all really depends on your relationship. It's if you have a really fine relationship with someone, and they care about you, and especially if you feel like they like you, like your work, or just like you as a human being, then I'd say, pull that card when you feel like it's necessary. But if you don't know someone very well, but you know that they know someone, well, I mean, the industry lives and dies by relationships. So you just, like you said, Craig, yep. Just kind of suck it up and utilize it, and then hopefully you could get them something in return. I mean, look, as long as not to be vulgar here, but as long as you're not an asshole, then people hopefully will be nice and produce you.
And that's the rule number one in life, is just don't be the a-hole, because that'll get you a lot farther than talent, actually. So
I agree. So
yeah. So Anonymous again is asking where you can research producers. I know there's IMDb Pro, but is there a place that you can go and look to see who's producing what at any given, especially if you know what specific property you're looking at?
Well, yeah, I mean, I recommend always looking at websites, deadline.com, deadlinehollywood.com, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, The Wrap. But Deadline probably is probably the number one source that the industry uses, and it's sort of always updating about producer deals. And yeah, so there's where you should be really mining, and sort of paying attention to all the projects that are out there, and kind of making a list of like, okay, they just announced that DC is doing this. They just announced that Marvel's doing that. They just announced all the films that came out in the Cannes Film Festival. This is exactly where it's always up to date. So I'd be using that like a Bible.
Yeah, and now that it's online, like in the old days, you'd actually have to look through the paper. Now you can just Google and it'll find all those things for you. Rodney Holland is a Southern writer with a Southern drama series. He's been asked to pitch to an A-list actors production company. Should he open the pitch about his life growing up in the South, or just get right into what the show is?
Absolutely open it up about yourself. If there's, my feeling is like, there's sort of a fine line between, you're sort of like a sob story, because you certainly don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. But if it's about if it really makes sense as to why you're connected to it, and it is, and again, it makes it authentic, then it's very important. I think it's always really great to be able to begin something of how you personally connect to something, because especially if you're pitching to an actor or an actress, I mean, it's artists always want to figure out an authentic way in, and if you end up touching them, then you're automatically connecting with them, and that's what it's about. And even if they're not an actor, that's what a pitch is about: getting the person across from you to connect. And if they connect, then you win. So I think always, figuring out how to inject yourself into it in a way that makes sense is always I think the right way.
And it also kind of makes you look indispensable, because if you're the only one, if they love it and they want to do it, and you're the only one who really knows it, they're not going to discard you.
Absolutely.
They're going to take you along on the ride.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Well, let's move on to after the pitch. We've done the pitch. They like what we've done, and they want to move forward. There's different types of agreements. There's and I want to go over them. They're fairly simple, but I do want to give people a little more clarification on the difference between selling a script or selling a project, licensing a project, or option agreements. So can you real quickly just differentiate the three? I mean, some are very obvious, but just to make it so we know what level field we're playing on.
Sure. So optioning is basically having someone control a project for a certain amount of time. So you could you option your script for, let's say a year, you get a few grand. And during that time, they have the ability to go out, set it up, and try to get it done. If after that period it expires, then you get the rights revert back to you, and you could go off and and try to set it up elsewhere. Or if they want to extend it, you could do that as well. A purchase is basically, it's just a sale. Instead of an option of controlling it for a month or a year or whatever, they control it, in perpetuity. And hopefully for a purchase, you get a much bigger payday. And then with licensing agreements, it's very similar to an option, but I think those have more to do with brands. I will say, one of the reasons why I prefer being a manager over an agent or a lawyer is because a lot of the negotiations, I usually defer to those guys for when it comes to deals. So yeah, as a manager, yeah, I have deals I could point to and give advice to, especially with some of my clients that don't have an agent or a lawyer. But a lot of what I do is more on the creative side, and doing notes on scripts and packaging and selling. But that's essentially the differences of the deals.
And when you go into this situation, is it better to have a manager with you at that point, or to use that to get a manager once you've kind of sold something? Because I know people are very interested in getting agents and managers, and I think it's important. We've kind of discussed over the past week to try to get yourself a manager and then let the agent sell stuff. So
I'm sorry, what's the question? Is it better to have go ahead.
So once you start heading into the sale part,
yeah,
is that when you want to make sure you want to use that to get a manager?
Well, yeah, if you're going into a sale, it's definitely good to have some kind of representative. Absolutely. You definitely don't want to be, my boss always says to her clients, don't be your own mouthpiece, especially for writers or directors and actors as well. Like you want to keep the creative to the creative and the business to the business, because it gets really sticky if you're trying to do your own thing, because you're trying to cultivate your relationship creatively with these people. And then when you start talking dollars, it could get ugly. And that's why it's nice to have a representative, because it's better that their job is basically play bad cop, you know. But this is all this should be for any company or people you're making a deal with. It's all to be expected, especially coming from a representative. So if you're able to get one of those 3 reps on your side, certainly it's definitely going into a sale. It's good to have at least one.
Ben Cetho is asking, how do you protect your intellectual property when pitching? I think a lot of people are super scared that they're going to pitch something, get turned down, and then they're going to see it on, Fox next month or on the screen somewhere.
The short answer is you really can't protect it. Unless, there are things you do when you write a script. You could register with the WGA, you could copyright it, you could do all that, but if it's like just a pitch or a deck, it's you kind of have to go into it knowing that you versus everybody else. It's highly likely that someone is going to have a very similar idea to you. Multiple people are going to have similar ideas to you. I remember, when I first started out, I was trying to shop a script, and I remember thinking, I don't want to share this with these people because I don't want people to steal my ideas and whatnot. And I remember some producer said to me, he's like, you got to get over that because it's you have to just have the expectation that that's really not going to happen, because people are just worried about themselves. They're worried about the things that they have, and everybody's got a collection of ideas and material. Yeah, there are people out there that are bad people that may want to steal, but you sort of have to have faith that that's not going to happen. And then over the years, I've seen a lot of people fresh in the business always scared about sharing the material. The fact of the matter is, you need to expose your material. That's the only way that you're going to excel. You want people, you really should want as many people as you can to see your stuff. And then if you gain a lot of interest and a lot of friends in the business, and you have, all this proof of like all the things you've done over time, then at least you have that if God forbid something does happen where it does seem like there's an obvious, copyright infringement or sort of thievery.
Yeah, that's why you're registering things with the WGA. You got emails that back up the claims later on when you send stuff. So you're right. I think people worrying about theft is a much more.
It's like you have a lot of other worries, and I feel like you have to kind of just let that go to kind of release yourself from that. And look, the sad part is I've been in many positions, many times where I've been developing something with clients or producing something with writers and whatnot. And then it's like, okay, great. Next week, we're going to take this out. And then all of a sudden, like Variety prints some story where it's like, oh my God, this is the exact same thing as we're doing, and then we're like, okay, maybe we should change this character to a girl, or, maybe we need to, make this not as dark, so you got to just sort of roll with it, unfortunately, but that's kind of nature of the beast.
Yeah. There was like I remember in the 90s, 2 asteroid movies. There were 2 volcano movies.
Right.
And totally separate creations.
Right.
So Nate Bynum is asking about options. Does having a production company option your script make a writer more attractive to lit managers? So knowing that you have a potential client with more options, is that a good thing, or is that something that
I think it depends. It depends who's optioned it. It's like I've had these emails before from people I don't know that it's like, I have 10 option scripts, and it's like, for me, that I don't really care about that, because I don't know if you're telling the truth, and I don't know who's optioned it. But if you say to me, I haven't sold anything before, but right now I have a project set up with Jordan Peele's company, then I'm like, okay, that's interesting. It's all about like who's because there's times when people have like, when you like set up a project, which often means a producer has aligned themselves with me, but I haven't got paid anything for it. Right. But sometimes it doesn't matter, because if the producer is a known entity, then that matters more. At least that matters more to me, So it's like, if you might come to me and be like, I haven't gotten paid anything ever. I've been in the business for 5-10 years, and I still haven't gotten paid on anything. But I've got a great relationship with Sam Raimi, Michael Keaton, and Viola Davis. Then I'll be like, okay, well, you're doing something right. You're surrounding yourself in the right circles. So so I care more about who you're kind of connected to and who you're rolling with. More than like you just telling me you have optioned material.
Well, that's a hell of a circle right there.
Well, that's not. I wish that was my circle, but I'm just.
No, I know that. As you're making it up, man, that's amazing.
Yeah, but well, and by the way, there's other production companies that are still very solid and prolific, and might not be as namey, but if you put down a company, and I don't know it, but I look it up and like, oh, they've done some cool stuff, then that matters too.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and I know this goes without saying, but I'm still going to say it. Don't lie, because all it takes is a phone call to find out you're wrong.
Oh
And
yeah, the industry is too small,
yeah, it is
very small.
very much a little neighborhood.
Yeah.
So a question about so talk about what you do for a client after signing him or her. So I'm a writer. I sent some spec scripts to you. You liked what I did. You signed me up. What's next?
Exposure. It's all about, I always talk about, relationship currency. So, if you come to me and you're like this, if you're a genre writer, let's say, or a director, and you have a spec, or you have a short film, or you have a feature that you've done on your own, whatever sort of like, shows off your work the best, we, put together a list of producers, and executives and say, okay, I think these are the people that I think will really respond to you. We send out your material and, little blurb on you. And, hopefully a lot of these guys will will say, oh, this person's great. We'd love to sit down with them. You have that, what's called sort of a general meeting. But in those general meetings, I always look at that as the opportunity to do like a soft pitch. So you have, even though it's sort of like a meeting of the minds, it's really an opportunity to be like, to say, well, actually what I'm up to is blah, blah, blah. And then you kind of plant that seed. They're like, oh, that's great. Send it to, either send it to me or pitch to me when it's ready. And then bam, that goes into the next file of like, okay, here's who we're going to target for your big next project. So that's kind of how it would work.
Okay. So Brian, kind of goes along with that. It's as a writer with zero connections. I'm sorry, Brian, but we'll make some connections for you. If you get your foot in the door with a manager, are you expected to have a list of producers in mind for them, or are you supposed to lean on your manager's suggestions of producers?
I think it's definitely good if you have often, if I start managing somebody, I ask them like, where do you have strong relationships, or who do you know? And even if it's just a couple people, it's always good to know. So if you have some, it certainly is good, but you don't, but it's certainly also having a representative, you are counting on them for those relationships. That's part of the reason why you have them. So, I mean, look, when you get signed to a place, be it a manager or an agency, it doesn't sort of like fix everything. You still have to hustle, for me, a lot of the reasons why I like someone or I sign someone is because I love that they can wear many hats. I love that they've been, able to make something on their own, and that people are receptive toward, and they have their own resources. They figure out how to get things done. And that's something that I really appreciate. So knowing that they could do that, then I go into it saying, okay, they have all these weapons and tools. I'm able to take my resources and help, and basically help them get to the next level. So the hustle is always going, and especially at an agency, they're not going to really care much about you until you have that first big victory. At that point, they'll be like, hey, buddy, they'll call you up, and then they become really effective. But, most of the time, if you're young in the industry, getting signed at a big agency, the optics of it are great, and it adds credibility, and you're able to go, oh, I'm at CAA, blah, blah. But you still are really doing a lot for yourself. Most of what you do is for yourself, because if you think about it, they have thousands of clients, and they're not going to really, it's impossible to pay attention to all of them. So they're really going to be paying attention to their top earners.
Erica Gabrielle is asking, when you get submissions, so we'll start off real quick. Do you accept unsolicited submissions at Magnolia?
Unfortunately, I don't. I used to back before Magnolia times, but nowadays I don't.
Okay. Back in the old days, she wants to know, what do you like to see in a subject line that makes you open the email? Because if you just say, so submission script title.
Well, you definitely don't want to put query or like, I think it's, if you could kind of, what's the best thing to say? it's sort of a way to grab them. I mean, like some people have said some really outlandish things, and sometimes that's interesting. But if you have a way that's connected to me or to or to someone I know, or it's always good to find a way. Like it's like one time I saw something like friends with your aunt's daughter's friend or something like that. It's like, what? And but if their name is in there and I'm like, oh, okay, they know my aunt. Okay, interesting. But something like that to really kind of get my attention, is I think it sometimes can be effective.
Okay. Well, Mary McGowan asks, because you just talked
But
about.
sorry, just to add to that, but also for people out there that are like, well, I don't know what outlandish, then something as simple as like what it is, contained genre film, film in the vein of Get Out,
Yeah.
something like that. I think is not bad.
It's like writing a log line. It's a totally different skill set because it's
Yeah.
about marketing versus creating and crafting a story, which
Absolutely.
two different skill sets.
Yeah.
So Mary McGowan wants to know, we just talked about how you have to hustle, and she knows how to hustle as an actor, but as a writer, how do you hustle? How do you hustle as a writer? So that takes so much time.
Well, I mean, I would say to her, what do you mean by hustle as an actor? As an actor, you probably put together reels. You probably, talk to casting directors. You probably, go on your auditions. And similarly with a writer, it's like get your material together. It's like if you have a lot of scripts or a lot of ideas, put them together in a succinct way. Have your sort of like stable of go-to people that know you, and send it out. Get them to refer you to other places. It's all about like how do I get my material to the next person? How do I expose it to the next person? Who's going to really appreciate this? And by and by being like what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of it right now, but also like making sure whoever you're targeting, you're not like I've said now a few times during this session, don't throw everything to everybody all at one time. Like you be really strategic about who you're targeting, right? And say, okay, for this person, I'm going to send this great idea. For this person, this idea, because if you just, it's easy to kind of like, put everything in one email and then like BCC everybody and then just blast it out. People do that.
Yeah,
People do that,
I'm
and that doesn't help anybody. So anyway.
Yeah, because it's really about just you can put everything out there, just don't put it all out at once. It really is the divide and conquer kind of situation. So you do want to put everything up against the wall. You just don't want to put it all against the same wall, if that makes sense.
It's true. I mean, and by the way, it's like, I know it's kind of annoying, but it is all part of the hustle. It's like, but for whoever you're targeting, it's like you have to kind of make everybody, each person you're sending it to, feel special. It's like, you're getting my material because you did this. You're getting, it's like you make the most sense for this. So it's like you're in the one hand, yes, that's true. It makes sense for them, but on the other hand, you're kind of blowing some smoke too. That's part of it. Yeah.
Well, some people want to know about you, Michael. So what kind of, I know you like good quality content, but what kind of genres do you personally like? What do you like to get? I mean, I know you'll look at anything that's good, but what preferences do you have?
Sure. Well, look, I know it sounds kind of cliche, but I really am a fan of entertainment. I'm a fan of movies. I really like I like anything from big action to small horror, to indie art house, to heavy drama. I've tended to gravitate towards a lot of genre. I mean, if you look at my clients, a lot of people are from different parts of the world that have are somewhat have done things in the genre space, horror, sci-fi, action. But the answer is twofold. One, I like anything that feels very commercially viable, because at the end of the day, it is a business, and if you have something that's commercially viable, then you're hopefully making some money. But on the other hand, I also really like a really distinct voice. So even if I read something that I feel like is totally like, oh my God, I don't know this is for. I have no idea if this would ever be released in any theater. It's so bizarre and strange, but this voice is undeniable. I certainly appreciate that, because I do feel like anybody who is just has a natural talent, people are going to be drawn to that. And if even if it's not that script that I read that felt like, I don't know who's going to watch this, but like, like distinct, like if you look at people like, Ari Aster, for example, who did Midsummer. This
Mhm.
guy is unreal. He does, he's very, he like, he almost has, he's like kind of like a Quentin Tarantino in the sense that they have their own genre. They,
Right.
it's like they do, similar, same thing with Jordan Peele now too. It's like people are like, oh, I want to do something like Midsummer. I want to do something like Get Out. Oh, this is very Tarantino. It's like they are their own thing. So if I see a voice like that, then and it's not sort of commercial, I still am attracted to it. So
Okay. Isabel Custer says she's noticed you manage quite a few of Latina writers and directors. Is that your specialty? Is that something you consciously have decided? Is it just happened to be that way? Or
no, a few years ago, I was on this. So anybody who's interested in genre over here, if you don't know about it, then you definitely should check it out. But there are these websites on YouTube called Dust and Alter. Dust is dedicated to sci-fi short films. Alter, it's its cousin, dedicated to horror short films. And I knew the people that started this years ago, and I just was really impressed with a lot of the material, and I started kind of scouring the website, reaching out to people, and I just found out that a lot of people were from different parts of the world, and from Latin America, South America, Asia. So that it's part of the reason why my roster has been so diverse and international. And then after I started kind of signing people off of that, I started reaching out to different places where I found some talent based off of the talent I found from those sites. So it's it's just what I've been drawn to. So that's really it.
well, Eric Coker has this ought to be that's why we get to the genre question. So he has an 8-episode anthology series on taboo black male sexuality in the can, ready to go.
Okay.
How would you manage him as a writer director? So you've got this taboo sexuality, but it's done. It's ready to go.
All shot.
I don't know if it's shot. It's just
Let me say in the can.
So it tells me it's done.
Okay.
I mean, what's
well,
in the can mean?
How would I mean, look, when the thing are shot and finished, well, first of all, I'd have to see if I respond to it. Let's say I did, that's great. I mean, everybody's always looking to find finished projects. So it's then about, I kind of going back to what I was saying before, it's aligning you with the right people in that space that would endorse you and the project. Right. So for example, like, what did you say? You said it was black taboo.
Black, taboo sexuality in the can, and it is.
Okay.
And he did respond. It is done. It is
okay.
done.
So I would go after producers that probably African American producers. To it's like, for example, there's I mentioned Viola Davis before. She has a company called Juvie Productions. She wants to be promoting African American voices and filmmakers, and if she someone like her would be interesting. Regina King now has her own company. If it's sort of genre, then Jordan Peele is an obvious go-to. And even if it's not an African-American producer, if it's someone who promotes diversity and is like, or maybe wants to do some sort of erotic type of series or has that kind of background, like maybe if you guys ever saw this show on Netflix called Sex Life, super erotic soap. Maybe the producers behind that would be interested in something like this. So that's kind of how I would think, like who's making this type of material, and I would go after those producers.
So my last question for you is going to be: you don't accept unsolicited material. So what kind of suggestions would you give someone to get to you? Someone who does not get. I mean, not personally. I mean, you can just easily throw your email in there and we'll just do that. That's one thing. But I'm talking about there are places that don't accept unsolicited material. How do you still get that in the room? Because it does happen.
Good question. Okay. The last panel, I said that I'm going to say the same thing that I said last time. I think one of the best things that that new writers, and when I say new writers and new directors, I don't mean like you guys are brand new. I mean new people to the industry that are trying to fight their way in. I think one of the best things you could do is align yourself with assistants. Assistants are the ones that are the gateway to their bosses, who are the people you essentially want to get to. And assistants have a lot more power than people think, because I mean, look, they are the first line of defense over there, and they're representing that boss, that company. Those assistants are trying to crawl their way up the ladder, and they're going to need their own body of writers and directors, to be able to point to, and to be able to sort of have at their disposal. So they need you, and you need them. And they want to be the one that's going to be like, oh my God, I just found the greatest writer director, and I just happened to be on this BAF panel, and they had a finished amazing anthology that was like Black taboo sex. It's amazing, and I've been shepherding this filmmaker for a year now. You got to check him out, and they'll check it out then, because they've picked that person to assist them for a reason. So I always say, make the assistants at agencies, production companies, and management companies, make them your best friends, because they're the ones that are going to be running stuff tomorrow, and that's how you get in.
Well, that's perfect advice, because it also leads into the whole networking, not being the jerk, all the lessons that you've had today. So thank you so much. Again, it's Michael Klein from Magnolia Entertainment. This is our final session of the conference. So I want to thank again everybody who has joined us all throughout the week. This is my first week with the film festival, and the attendees have been great. So I just want to say thank you very much, and we hope to see you guys next year.
Bye, guys.